December 26th, 1996. 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey found dead in her family's home. One witness, her 9-year-old brother, Burke. His first statement to investigators.
I was like laying in bed with my eyes open.
I was asleep. I didn't hear anything. 20 years pass. Thousands of headlines. (2016). Burke Ramsey speaks publicly for the first time.
I don't remember getting up until my dad came in there.
I had a toy I wanted to put together. I probably went downstairs. I remember being downstairs after everyone was kind of in bed. Wait, downstairs? That's not asleep the entire night. One witness. 2 decades. 2 different stories. His fingerprints were on the bowl. He heard voices that night. He's smiling. That's suspicious. Memory doesn't work like we think it does. This is not about guilt. This is about something far more disturbing. How reliable is a childhood memory of trauma when recalled 20 years later, under global scrutiny? Can any witness remember accurately across 2 decades? Or does memory rewrite itself? What Burke Ramsey said at age 9 versus what he says now. A Witness Statement Evolution documentary. January 1997, Boulder, Colorado. Weeks after 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey is found murdered in her family's home. Burke Ramsey is 9 years old. According to investigators who characterized his statements, Burke reported being asleep during the entire incident. He stayed in his bedroom. He heard nothing. September 2016. Burke Ramsey, now 29 years old. First major public interview. Same question. What happened that night? Burke states, I was asleep. I didn't wake up during the night. But then he adds something new. I had a toy I wanted to put together. I probably went downstairs. I remember being downstairs after everyone was kind of in bed. Wait, downstairs? Playing with a toy? That's not asleep the entire night. Between these 2 accounts, 20 years passed. Thousands of media stories, dozens of documentaries, countless conspiracy theories. And a 9-year-old child grew into an adult under relentless public suspicion. This documentary doesn't ask whether Burke Ramsey is guilty. He has never been charged. He was officially cleared in 2008. Instead, we ask something more uncomfortable and more scientifically important. How does a child witness's memory change across 2 decades of trauma, media saturation, and investigative pressure? This is not about guilt or innocence. This is about witness statement evolution and what it reveals about the limits of human memory. December 25th through 26th, 1996. The Ramsey family home, Boulder, Colorado. JonBenet Ramsey, age 6, found deceased. Ransom note discovered. The case becomes one of the most scrutinized investigations in American history. Burke Ramsey, age 9 that night. JonBenet's older brother, the only other child in the home, never charged. Officially cleared by DNA evidence in 2008. The case remains unsolved. Burke Ramsey is not a suspect under the law. He is a witness, one whose statements span from childhood to adulthood. But here's the critical question. What evidence can we actually examine? We have investigator characterizations of childhood interviews, but not full transcripts. We have limited video footage from 1997 interviews. We have the doctor Phil interview from 2016, the full broadcast. We have published accounts by Detectives Steve Thomas and James Kolar. We have official Boulder police statements. But we don't have full transcripts of childhood interviews. We don't have grand jury testimony, which is sealed by law. We don't have complete interview recordings. We don't have follow-up interview details from the years between childhood and adulthood. This documentation gap is critical. We're analyzing statement evolution with partial access to the beginning and full access to the end, but limited visibility into the middle 19 years. Our analysis is therefore necessarily incomplete, but what we can examine remains revealing. We'll track Burke's statements across 5 critical areas. First, the core account. I was asleep. We'll examine consistency versus evolution. Second, the pineapple contradiction. Physical evidence versus stated timeline. Third, the voices discrepancy. What he heard, when, and how it changed. Fourth, demeanor across time, from child to adult presentation. And fifth, the adult comprehensive account, the 2016 reconstruction. Each reveals different aspects of memory evolution, investigative interpretation, and the impossibility of preserving childhood trauma memory intact across decades. Let's begin with the baseline. Burke Ramsey, age 9 to 10. Multiple interviews conducted between 1997 and 1998. Child forensic psychologist present. Parents' attorneys often present. Across early interviews, investigators characterized Burke's account consistently. He was asleep, remained in his bedroom, heard nothing unusual. Parents woke him the next morning. Notice what's notable here. Minimal detail. No temporal markers. No sensory memories of falling asleep or waking. Just the simple statement, I was asleep. For a 9-year-old, this isn't necessarily evasion. It's consistent with having no episodic memory to report. Children don't naturally provide the kind of detailed temporal sequencing adults expect. Child psychologists identify a phenomenon called memory shielding, where traumatized children simplify or emotionally distance themselves from overwhelming events. Additionally, children ages 9 to 11 have limited episodic memory capacity. They have poor temporal sequencing. High stress impairs memory encoding. They tend towards simple, emotionally safe narratives. Burke's I was asleep could reflect several things. It could reflect genuine lack of memory due to stress-impaired encoding. It could reflect memory shielding, psychological protection from trauma. It could reflect compliance with adult guidance, legal protection advised by attorneys, or it could simply be the truth. He actually was asleep. In the 1997 initial interviews, Burke said he was asleep in his room. In the 1998 follow-up interviews, he maintained the same core account. No embellishment was added initially. No contradictions were documented in the early phase. High initial consistency is typical of 2 scenarios: truthful witnesses with simple accounts, or coached witnesses maintaining a script. Without interview recordings showing how questions were asked, we cannot determine which applies here. Now we turn to physical evidence that complicates the timeline. Crime scene investigators documented a bowl of pineapple on the kitchen table. Burke's fingerprints were on the bowl. JonBenét's autopsy revealed pineapple in her stomach, eaten shortly before death. The family's unified timeline went like this. Everyone went to bed after returning from a Christmas party around 9:30 to 10 p.m. JonBenét was carried inside asleep. Burke went to bed. Everyone remained in their bedrooms until morning. But the pineapple evidence suggested a different timeline. Someone was downstairs after the family went to bed. Someone either prepared or ate that pineapple. And Burke's fingerprints indicated he'd touched that bowl. From 1997 through 2015, all family members maintained the bedtime timeline. No one acknowledged being downstairs. no explanation was offered for the pineapple. Then, Dr. Phil, September 2016. Burke addresses the evidence directly. He says, "I had a toy that I wanted to put together. I probably went downstairs. I remember being downstairs after everyone was kind of in bed and wanting to get this thing out. There it is." After 20 years of family statements maintaining everyone went straight to bed, Burke acknowledges being downstairs, exactly where the pineapple evidence suggested someone had been. How do we interpret this evolution? There are three possible explanations. Option 1. Genuine forgotten detail. 20 years passed. Going downstairs for a toy might have seemed insignificant to a 9-year-old. Not worth mentioning. Easily forgotten. As an adult reviewing the case, the memory surfaced. This happens. Option 2. Protected information, now safe to disclose. For 20 years, admitting to being downstairs contradicted the family's unified defense. Perhaps attorneys advised maintaining the simpler timeline. In 2016, officially cleared, Burke felt able to acknowledge what actually happened. Option 3. Memory reconstruction from evidence. Over 20 years, Burke knew about the pineapple bowl and his fingerprints. Media covered it extensively. His adult brain may have reconstructed a memory to explain the evidence. My prints were there, so I must have been downstairs. Memory research shows all three are possible. What's critical? Adding detail after 20 years, especially detail that explains physical evidence, must be viewed with caution. Not because Burke is lying, but because our brains naturally construct narratives to make sense of evidence learned after the fact. The bowl existed. Burke's prints were on it. When he touched it, that night or another time, and whether he genuinely remembers or has reconstructed the memory, we cannot determine. According to investigators, something changed in 1998 follow-up interviews. Burke stated he heard voices the night of JonBenét's death. That's different from, "I was asleep and heard nothing." But here's where investigative documentation becomes critical. What exactly did heard voices mean? Voices when? Middle of night? Morning? Voices of whom? Parents? Intruder? JonBenet? How distinct? Words? Understood? Or just sounds? What question led to this response? We don't know, because we have only investigator characterizations, not transcripts. Some investigators viewed this as contradiction, proving Burke knows more than he's saying. Why would a child hear unusual voices when his sister is being murdered and not investigate, not remember more details? Other investigators saw consistency. Burke heard voices in the morning, his parents searching for JonBenet, his mother's scream finding the ransom note. This doesn't contradict his account. It clarifies it. Same statement, completely different interpretations. Without the actual interview, we cannot assess which is accurate. In 2016, Burke's account goes like this. "I was asleep. I remember waking up and my mom was going nuts. I don't know what was going on initially. I remember being in my room when the commotion was going on." So Burke woke to commotion. He heard his mother going nuts. His phrase, "He stayed in his room." If heard voices in 1998 referred to morning commotion and 2016 describes hearing his mother's discovery, these could be the same event described with different language precision. Children use imprecise language. Voices to a 10-year-old might mean any human sounds. Parents calling out, someone screaming, even TV audio. Adults interpret voices as distinct conversation. That's not necessarily what Burke meant. The evolution from heard voices in 1998 to woke to commotion from my mom in 2016 might not be evolution at all. It might be clarification. Burke finally explaining in his own words what he meant, without investigators' interpretation filtering it. Beyond what Burke said, observers focused intensely on how he appeared when saying it. Limited video footage shows Burke at age 10 discussing his family, Christmas, his sister. Public observers noted somewhat flat affect, smiling at times when discussing JonBenet, playing with toys during the interview, answering matter-of-factly. The public interpretation? He doesn't seem sad. He's smiling about his dead sister. That's suspicious. But 9-year-olds do not process death like adults. Research on children and grief shows ages 9 to 11 commonly exhibit detachment, emotional flatness, protecting them from overwhelm. They show regression to play, using toys to self-soothe during stress. They display inappropriate affect, smiling when discussing sad topics due to discomfort. They engage in literal, concrete thinking, answering factually without emotional color. None of these indicate guilt. They indicate a traumatized child trying to function under cognitive overload. Common trauma defense mechanisms in children include dissociation, emotional numbing, compartmentalization, separating horror from the present moment, people-pleasing, trying to appear normal for watching adults. Yet untrained public observers interpreted Burke's demeanor as suspicious. A normal child would be crying, but trauma experts know there is no normal response to a sibling's murder. 20 years later, Dr. Phil interview. Burke at 29. Nervous, smiling, socially awkward presentation, occasionally smirking when discussing serious topics. Public reaction, still smiling, still weird, still suspicious. But consider this alternative interpretation. Burke spent his entire adult life knowing millions suspect him of murdering his sister. Never charged, officially cleared, yet suspicion persists. Nervous smiling under discomfort is a documented anxiety reaction, not joy, but dysregulation. Burke avoided public life for 20 years. His first major interview, discussing his sister's murder on national television, social awkwardness is expected, not suspicious. People sometimes emotionally freeze at the age of their trauma. Burke at 29 might still access the same dissociative coping he used at 9. Demeanor is not evidence. Research is unequivocal on this. Nervous behavior, flat affect, inappropriate smiling. These tell us nothing about truthfulness. Yet they're what people remember most. September 2016. Burke Ramsey agrees to his first major media interview. Why, then? CBS had announced The Case of JonBenet Ramsey, a documentary featuring investigators suggesting Burke's involvement. Burke's attorneys saw the need to respond. Context matters. This wasn't a neutral forensic interview. This was broadcast television with Dr. Phil McGraw, structured for viewer engagement and ratings, not investigative accuracy. Dr. Phil asked Burke to describe December 25th through 26th, 1996. Here's Burke's account, in his own words. Coming home. We came home. I had some toy I wanted to put together. I probably went downstairs. I was just kind of hanging out by myself. Going to bed. Then I went to my room. That night, I was in my bed. I was asleep. I don't remember hearing anything out of the ordinary. Morning discovery. I remember waking up and my mom was going nuts. I could hear her, but I didn't know what was going on. His response? I stayed in my room. I was kind of frozen. Why? He stayed hidden. I was scared. I didn't want to be blamed for something I didn't do. New details were added in this adult account. Being downstairs with a toy after bedtime. Specific description of his mother's reaction. Explanation for staying in his room. Frozen. Scared. But some elements remained maintained. He was asleep during the critical time frame. He heard commotion in the morning. He stayed in his bedroom rather than investigating. He had no knowledge of what happened to JonBenet. His certainty level? Moderate. He uses phrases like, I remember, I probably, I don't remember. This is appropriate for 20-year-old memories. What does memory science tell us about recollection after 20 years? Research findings are clear. Peripheral details fade. Central details remain but get reconstructed. Emotional memories feel stronger but aren't more accurate. We confuse memories of the event with memories of discussing the event. Each recall doesn't access the original memory. It accesses the last time we recalled it. Burke has been asked about December 25th through 26th, 1996, hundreds of times across 2 decades. He's seen documentaries, read articles, heard theories. Every time he recalls that night, his brain isn't accessing 1996. It's accessing his last reconstruction. Burke knows what the pineapple evidence showed. He knows about his fingerprints. He knows timeline inconsistencies. His adult brain has access to information his 9-year-old brain didn't have. That information shapes reconstructed memories. The question isn't, is Burke's 2016 account accurate? The question is, could anyone's 20-year-old memory of a traumatic childhood night, revisited hundreds of times under global scrutiny, remain accurate? Memory, science, answer. No. Burke's memory, whether he harmed his sister or was innocently asleep, has been reconstructed, influenced, and possibly contaminated by 2 decades of exposure, questioning, and media saturation. That doesn't mean he's lying. It means his memory, like all human memory after 20 years, is unreliable. Let's track what evolved across Burke Ramsey's statements from 1997 to 2016. Pattern 1. Detail addition over time. 1997 to 1998. Minimal detail. I was asleep. 2016. Specific details. Downstairs with toy. Mother's reaction. Staying hidden out of fear. Direction. Details. Increased over time. Normal memory degradation predicts detail decrease. Burke showed the opposite, suggesting either delayed recall of forgotten details or memory reconstruction filling gaps with plausible narratives learned over 20 years. Pattern 2. Timeline contradiction. The family's initial unified account. Everyone in bed by 10 p.m. Burke's 2016 account. He came back downstairs after bedtime. This fundamentally changes the timeline, and it took 20 years to emerge. Pattern 3. Certainty. Stability. Unlike many witnesses who show certainty inflation, moving from uncertain to certain, Burke maintained moderate certainty throughout. Both as child and adult, he used qualifiers. I think, probably, I don't remember. This is actually a reliability marker. Inappropriate overconfidence is a red flag for false memory. Burke's consistent acknowledgement of uncertainty is psychologically appropriate. What factors shaped this evolution? 6 simultaneous factors were at work. 1. Cognitive development, 9 to 29. Dramatic maturation, inability to conceptualize, process, and articulate memories. 2. Media saturation, 20 years of documentaries, books, articles, theories, knowledge of evidence can unconsciously reshape memory reconstruction. 3. Legal guidance. Attorneys were present during childhood interviews. Legal advice shapes statements, not to lie, but to avoid self-incrimination. 4. Family narrative conformity. Burke didn't develop his memory in isolation. Family discussions over 20 years naturally align narratives through normal memory conformity. 5. Public scrutiny pressure. Living under suspicion by millions creates psychological burden affecting how someone presents information. 6. Trauma processing. Childhood trauma creates memory fragmentation. Adult processing through maturation might allow integration of fragmented memories, or might create false integration. All 6 factors work simultaneously. Separating genuine memory from influenced reconstruction is impossible. We cannot determine whether childhood "I was asleep" was truthful or coached. We cannot determine whether adult acknowledgement of being downstairs is delayed truth or reconstructed narrative. We cannot determine whether details added are genuine memories or inferences from evidence. We cannot determine whether demeanor indicates guilt, trauma, or neurodevelopmental difference. What we can observe, his account evolved from minimal to specific detail over 20 years. Timeline acknowledgement contradicted the original family account. Demeanor remained consistent, though publicly misinterpreted. Core claim of not witnessing the crime never changed. To understand Burke's statement evolution, we need to understand how human memory actually works. Memory is not recording. Memory is reconstruction. When you experience an event, your brain encodes fragments, sensory details, emotions, context. Storage is imperfect, degrading immediately. Retrieval, remembering, is your brain rebuilding the event from fragments, filling gaps with logic and inference. Each time you remember, you're not accessing the original. You're accessing your last reconstruction, and each reconstruction can alter details. For traumatic memories, specifically, several factors come into play. Encoding impairment. High stress floods the brain with cortisol, impairing hippocampal function, the area encoding detailed memories. Result: fragmented, incomplete, initial memories. The flashbulb memory paradox. Strong emotional events create vivid memories, but vividness doesn't equal accuracy. We feel certain while being objectively wrong. Time compression. Traumatic events feel longer or shorter than they were. A child's temporal sense during crisis is unreliable. Children under 10 have limited episodic memory capacity. They have poor temporal sequencing, struggling to answer, "When did this happen?" They have high suggestibility to adult expectations. They have difficulty distinguishing what they witnessed from what they were told. They have tendency to confuse repeated events. A 9-year-old's memory of a traumatic night is inherently unreliable, not because the child is dishonest, but because their cognitive architecture cannot produce detailed, accurate encoding under stress. What happens over 20 years? Source confusion. We forget where information came from. Did you witness it? Hear about it? See it in media? Or dream it? Burke may genuinely not know which details are original memories versus learned information, post-event information. Everything Burke learned after December 26, 1996, media coverage, evidence descriptions, can retroactively alter memory. Studies show witnesses incorporate photograph details into memory as if they witnessed them. Repeated retrieval. Every time Burke was asked about that night, he strengthened certain neural pathways, while others faded. The story becomes smoother, more coherent. But coherence doesn't equal accuracy. Narrative coherence pressure. Human brains want stories that make sense. When memories have gaps, we fill them with plausible inferences. "My fingerprints were on the bowl" becomes, "I remember being downstairs." After 20 years, no one, not Burke, not any witness, can reliably distinguish original memory from reconstructed narrative. Burke Ramsey, age 9 to age 29. One witness across 20 years. What evolved? From "I was asleep" to "I was downstairs with a toy." detail added that contradicted the original family timeline. From "I heard nothing" to "I heard my mum going nuts." Clarification or evolution? We cannot fully determine. From child flat affect to adult nervous smiling. Demeanor consistency that was misinterpreted as suspicious rather than recognized as trauma response. From minimal details to more specific narrative. The opposite of normal memory degradation. What remained consistent? Core claim. "I didn't see what happened to JonBenet." Never wavered. Moderate certainty level. Never claimed absolute knowledge. Stayed in bedroom during critical time frame. Maintained across all accounts. This is witness statement evolution. Not necessarily deception. Not necessarily truth. But definitely evolution shaped by time, trauma, media, development, and the impossibility of preserving childhood memory intact across 2 decades. Burke's case raises fundamental questions that extend beyond this specific investigation. How should we evaluate childhood witness statements when the child was traumatized by the event itself? When a witness's adult recollection contradicts their childhood account, which should be trusted, or should neither be considered reliable? How do we separate normal memory evolution from memory evolution, indicating coaching or deception? Should investigators interview child witnesses multiple times to develop information, or does repeated questioning inevitably contaminate memory? How do we account for media saturation in high-profile cases when evaluating statement changes? What protections should exist for child witnesses in cases where family members are suspects? And ultimately, is it ever possible to get reliable information from a 9-year-old about a traumatic event involving family members? 1 witness, 2 decades. A statement that evolved from "I was asleep" to "I was downstairs." What this examination reveals: childhood memories of trauma, recalled across 20 years under global scrutiny, cannot be treated as reliable evidence. Not because children lie, not because Burke, specifically, is unreliable, but because human memory, child or adult, doesn't work the way we want it to. We want witnesses to be video cameras. They're not. We want childhood memories to remain frozen and accurate. They don't. We want statement evolution to indicate deception. It doesn't. Burke Ramsey may remember that night exactly as it happened. Or he may remember a reconstruction built from fragments, inferences, and 2 decades of exposure to information he didn't have at age 9. We cannot determine which. What we can determine: investigative and legal systems that rely on witness memory, especially child witness memory in family cases, must confront the reality that memory is reconstructive, malleable, and profoundly unreliable over time. JonBenét's murder remains unsolved. Burke's memory remains unknowable, and the questions about how we investigate cases involving child witnesses remain urgent.